Donald Trump says India and America will always be friends. Is this a change of heart or just a pause before the next tariff tantrum? Tonight we'll discuss. Even as Washington calibrates its tone, Moscow is raising the stakes. Russia has carried out its largest air attack since the war in Ukraine began. And in the middle of this battlefield economy, the founder of Blackwater is back. Why is he courting Ukraine and who is really profiting from this war? Across the Pacific, tensions of a different kind. A Hyundai plant raided in the United States, a labor dispute that could spiral into a diplomatic row with South Korea. And then there's Elon Musk on track for a pay package worth $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Is this innovation being rewarded or corporate excess at its peak? In Asia, Japan's Prime Minister steps down. We'll explain why his resignation matters for Japan and for the world. In Nepal, Gen Z is on the streets, not protesting jobs or inflation, but a ban on social media. In Africa, the world's largest dam is testing old rivalries, one of the world's largest dams. This is between Egypt, Ethiopia and the Sudan. And finally, a very different story from the Vatican, where the world's first millennial saint has been anointed. They're calling him God's influencer. Also, how AI is changing the apps on your phone and what it means for the way you live online. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Palestinian gunmen opened fire at a bus stop in East Jerusalem, killing 6 people and injuring several others. This is one of the deadliest anti-Israeli attacks since the Gaza war began in 2023. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits the site of the shooting, says the attack strengthens Israel's determination to fight terrorism. Pakistan police arrest at least 60 people at a protest over a suicide attack. Demonstrators took to the streets across more than a dozen cities in Balochistan, demanding accountability over an attack claimed by the Islamic State. Businesses were shut as the protesters clashed with the police in the country's poorest province. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto removes his finance minister in a cabinet reshuffle. This comes after deadly anti-government protests across the country. The former finance minister is an influential figure. Her house was ransacked during the recent protests over lavish perks for lawmakers. Norway votes in a tight election. The ruling Labour Party is narrowly favoured to return to power. Boosted by Donald Trump's tariffs and the war in Ukraine, Norway is a NATO member and shares a border with Russia in the Arctic. The final results are expected by tomorrow. And millions in London brace for a week of transport chaos as the city's underground rail network comes to a standstill. Yesterday, the staff began a 5-day strike over pay and working conditions. London's underground trains carry up to 5 million passengers a day.
I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about.
Diplomacy used to be like Test cricket. Momentum was built over hours and days. But with Donald Trump, it's more like T20. Every ball, every over is an event. Just look at what happened over the weekend. Trump appeared to make a U-turn. For weeks, his officials had been attacking India. They accused New Delhi of funding Russia's war in Ukraine. By Friday, he sounded defeatist. Trump posted a picture, this one, of Prime Minister Modi, President Putin and President Xi. He said America had lost India and Russia to China. But hours later, his tone changed. Trump praised his friendship with Prime Minister Modi. He said there is a special relationship between India and the US.
Be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about.
Within hours, Prime Minister Modi reacted. Let me quote from what he said: "Deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of our ties. India and the US have a very positive and forward-looking, comprehensive and global strategic partnership." So what's cooking here? Why is Trump softening his rhetoric? Why now? And what happens next? Well, with Donald Trump, statements do not matter as much. Like we've said before, do not focus on his words, focus on his actions. And so far, the actions have not changed. The US is yet to lift the extra tariffs on India. There is also no indication that the trade talks will resume. Until that happens, the ties will not improve. Having said that, this is a positive sign. After days of caste attacks and rants, this is a welcome change. It may not magically reset ties, but it does stem the bad headlines. Which brings us to the second question: why now? Well, last week was not a good look for Trump. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, met in China. The pictures would have shocked Washington. Forget breaking the ice. Modi, Xi and Putin were joking and smiling. Now, if you're a policymaker in Washington, it does not get worse than that. Maybe that is why Trump is making amends. Maybe he realizes that he pushed India too hard. Or it could be the backdoor push. Back in April, India hired a lobbyist in Washington, a man named Jason Miller. Reports say New Delhi is paying him $1.8 million per year. And this Saturday, he met Donald Trump. Now, we know that the US president likes personal outreaches. Perhaps that is why he changed his tone. At this point, we can only guess. Which brings us to the final question: what happens next? Well, that depends entirely on one person, and that person is Donald Trump. India has made its position clear. India is not looking to abandon its relations with America. Hence, Prime Minister Modi's message on Saturday. He reacted within hours of Trump's remarks. Also, India is not putting all its eggs in one basket, whether it's America's basket or someone else's. And today is proof of that. Brazil convened a virtual meeting of BRICS today. The agenda was Trump's tariffs. Xi Jinping attended the meeting virtually. So did Vladimir Putin. But Prime Minister Modi did not attend it. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was there in his place. So like I said, India is not shutting the door on America. It is only seeking fair ties. If Trump is serious about a reset, he needs to start making moves. On Saturday, he praised India and Prime Minister Modi. The next step could be a phone call or maybe an invite to the White House or a pause in the secondary tariffs. Basically, some sort of action to signal intent. If that does happen, it would vindicate India's policy, its long-standing commitment to strategic autonomy, a masterclass in hedging and maneuvering. And even then, the question of trust remains. Will New Delhi trust the Trump White House after this fiasco, after these attacks and flip-flops? It will take more than small praises to fix this mess. So we say it's too early to celebrate Trump's remarks. They're encouraging, but they're not enough. What we need to see is action, concrete steps to fix what Trump broke.
Second phase of sanctions against Russia?
Yeah. When a war drags on for more than 3 years, the world often learns to live with it. The shock dulls and the outrage becomes routine. Until something dramatic happens that jolts everyone back awake. For Ukraine, that jolt came on Sunday in the form of a major attack. It was Russia's biggest air attack since the war began in 2022. 810 drones and 13 missiles, all fired overnight. The target? All of Ukraine. From the north to the south and even the east, cities were pummeled. Several buildings were on fire, including the main government building in Kiev.
I am Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yulia Sviridenko. I am now in the building of Ukrainian government. For the first time since the start of full-scale war, the enemy struck the government building in the very center of Kiev. You can see the consequences of the enemy's attack. The fire in 800 square meters has been put out. Our rescuers continue to work here. It looks like Russia is not ready and is not seeking peace, is not ready for negotiations.
This building houses the offices of Ukraine's top ministers. Like she said, it's the first time it was hit in this war. So this is new for Kiev. Until now, the seat of power in Ukraine was heavily protected, but this attack has left them exposed. Ukraine says it took down more than 700 drones. It contained the casualty figure to 4, including a baby. Still, 9 missiles and 56 drones managed to strike. They hit 37 locations across Ukraine, and the damage is for the world to see. Ukraine has called these attacks ruthless. President Zelensky says they are a deliberate crime, a way for Russia to prolong the war.
It is important that today we saw a broad response from our partners to this strike. Clearly, Russia is trying to inflict pain on Ukraine with even more brazen attacks. This is a clear sign that Putin is testing the world, whether they will accept or tolerate this.
Moscow, on the other hand, denies targeting civilian infrastructure. It says the targets were only military. And the Russian attacks come after what happened last week. We told you about those Ukrainian strikes. They struck the Druzhba oil pipeline in Russia. The pipeline, like I said, is located in Russia, in the Bryansk region. This pipeline delivers Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. It was hit last week. Although Russia has not confirmed the attack, and Hungary too says that oil deliveries are on schedule, but you don't always need official confirmation when the images tell the story. There is rising smoke everywhere and telltale signs of an attack. And this also tells you the larger story, that this war is not fading into the background, it is only escalating. Just a few weeks ago, there was a flurry of diplomacy, but it has not changed the picture on the battlefield. Nonetheless, there is one man who remains optimistic, and that is US President Donald Trump. He says he has settled 7 wars, so this one too should be a breeze.
So, no, I am not thrilled with what's happening there, I will tell you. I think it's going to get settled. So I settled 7 wars. This, I would have said, would have been maybe the easiest one to settle of all. But with war, you never know what you're getting. But we're going to get it, I believe we're going to get it settled. But I am not happy with them. I'm not happy with anything having to do with that war. It's just such a waste of great humanity.
Donald Trump promised to end this war in 1 day, on his first day in office. It has already been 226 days. The war is nowhere close to an end. Now Trump says he will speak to Putin soon. It's not clear what that may achieve.
When do you plan to speak to President Putin next? And what
Very
might
soon.
second?
Over the next couple of days. Look, we're going to get it done. The Russia-Ukraine situation, we're going to get it done. I have confidence we're going to get it done.
Get it done how? Well, Trump's advisors seem to have a plan. Target India, because India is buying oil from Russia. One of the many countries buying oil from Russia, and not even the largest buyer, but for some reason, Washington has decided to make this only about India. They say India is funding the Russian war machine. So they've sanctioned India with 50% tariffs on Indian imports. Of course, that did not stop India's oil purchases from Russia, because India is doing it for its own energy security, not to please anyone. So the pressure tactic failed, and the Trump administration seems to want to double down. And this is coming from their Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He wants Europe to join in. He wants Europe to sanction countries that are buying from Russia.
Prepared to increase pressure on Russia, but we need our European partners to follow us, because if the U.S. and the EU do this together, we are in a race now between how long can the Ukrainian military hold up versus how long can the Russian economy hold up. And if the US and the EU can come in, do more sanctions, secondary tariffs on the countries that buy Russian oil, the Russian economy will be in full collapse, and that will bring President Putin to the table.
And then there is this man, Peter Navarro. He is the White House trade advisor. He has gone on a rant against India on multiple occasions. He says India buys Russian oil for profit and those revenues feed Russia's war machine. Well, recently, one of his claims was fact-checked by Community Notes on X, and things got so ridiculous that Elon Musk himself had to step in. Even that did not stop Navarro. He is still calling for more tariffs. So that's two Trump officials, Scott Bessent and Peter Navarro. And guess who is joining them in targeting countries that do business with Russia? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
That is why it is important that the statements of leaders, states, and institutions be backed by strong actions, sanctions against Russia, against individuals associated with Russia, tough tariffs, and other restrictions on trade with Russia. Their losses must be felt. That is what is truly convincing. And also, our long-range capabilities. Putin does not want negotiations. He is clearly hiding from them, so Russia's fuel shortages and other economic troubles are the logical response to its refusal to agree to a ceasefire or a meeting at the leaders' level.
So on one hand, Zelensky is reaching out to India, pitching new channels of peace and saying that India, with its global stature, can be a balancing voice. On the other hand, he is also urging for more sanctions, for India to stop buying Russian oil. And these are two very different messages, peace and pressure, both directed at New Delhi, and both unlikely to sway New Delhi. Because throughout, India's position has not changed. It stands for peace, but refuses to be bullied. Also, at this point, the bigger question is this: will any of this change the course of war? 3 years in, everyone says they want peace, yet everyone acts as if they're preparing for more war. And that is the paradox, a conflict where peace is the goal, but pressure remains the strategy. There's a new entrant on Ukraine's battlefield. It is not a country or a foreign military. It's a mercenary, a man called Erik Prince. We've told you about him on the show. He's the controversial founder of Blackwater, the defunct private military contractor of America. You could call it America's Wagner. All the reports say it's Blackwater that inspired Wagner. And this company, Blackwater, was set up by Erik Prince. It is tied to all of America's major wars in the last 3 decades. From Iraq to Afghanistan, Blackwater was everywhere. They made headlines for war crimes and had to be shut down. But Erik Prince is still around, and he's hunting for new opportunities in another war, Ukraine. Prince is eyeing a role in post-war Ukraine. A new report is out. It says Erik Prince is pitching his services and targeting Ukraine's booming drone industry. He wants to buy drone companies in the country, and he's considering firms that were involved in the war against Russia. Reports say Erik Prince has met local defense companies, he's had discussions with them, and it all adds up. You see, drones dominate the Ukrainian battlefield. They have inflicted considerable damage on Russia. Drones are behind 80% of Russian casualties in this war. So they've proven to be an effective weapon for Ukraine. Western companies are showing interest in Ukraine's drone industry. They want access to Kiev's drone data. More importantly, they want Ukraine's learnings from the battlefield. And that explains Erik Prince's interest in Ukraine. This conflict could script his comeback. For those who haven't followed his story, here's a quick primer. After the 9/11 attacks in the US, Washington launched what it called the global war on terror. And Blackwater was a key part of it. It was central to US military strategy. It got contracts worth billions, especially during the war in Iraq. That's what changed Erik Prince's fortunes. In 2007, Blackwater mercenaries killed civilians in Baghdad. It led to global outrage. Prince was called before the US Congress and he was grilled. Ultimately, Blackwater was banned in Iraq. In 2010, Prince had to sell the company. His legal troubles were mounting. The negative publicity was hurting him. And since then, Prince has rebranded. He has built new ventures. One of them is called Vectus Global. It's a shadowy defense company. Prince has another business called Unplugged. It's an encrypted communications company. And he is looking to make his next move in Ukraine. For years, Eric Prince has been trying to get a foothold there. 5 years ago, he'd pitched a plan to Zelensky. Prince suggested using a private army in the Donbass. The Donbass, as you would know, is a region in eastern Ukraine. It is one of the main flashpoints between Russia and Ukraine. Since 2014, Russia has tried to destabilize this region, first with proxy forces and then with a direct invasion in 2022. Russian forces have captured large parts of the Donbass. In fact, today, Russia controls 88% of the Donbass. So before the war in 2020, Prince had made a proposal to Zelensky, use a private army to settle the conflict in eastern Donbass. That was the deal that he offered. The private army would be his and they would fight for Ukraine. But this deal never took off. And now in 2025, Eric Prince is back with a new idea. This time he's betting on drones. And his moves are well timed. The US could use a private military in Ukraine. Reports say the idea is being, quote unquote, actively discussed. This is for a post-war scenario. When the war ends, private contractors could be used to build fortifications to protect American interests and to deter Russia from violating the ceasefire, so that the US retains a foothold in Ukraine without committing American troops on the ground. And this is not a new idea. The US has used this model before to disastrous effect, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. And now it is back on the table for Ukraine. If they go down this road, if they use private contractors, Eric Prince could play a major role. Apparently, he has access to Trump's inner circle. Reports say Prince is still in contact with US defense and intelligence officials, so he could be angling for a bigger role. So far, Trump has not signed off on this plan, the plan to involve private military contractors. There is no confirmation, but he hasn't ruled it out either. So what's going on here? Is this about protecting Ukraine? Or is it about making money off a conflict? The logic of involving private military remains the same. It allows the US to create deterrence without committing troops. Remember, Trump has positioned himself as a no-war president. So this approach suits him politically as well. But history shows that this does not work. It certainly hasn't worked for the US. They lost thousands of lives and lost face in both Iraq and Afghanistan. They could not achieve their objectives and left behind unstable nations. The only side that benefited were private contractors like Eric Prince. They made billions of dollars from US government contracts, and now Ukraine risks falling into the same trap. This is a country fighting for survival. It needs help from its allies. Instead, it is attracting private contractors. They're coming in as investors in conflict. So the war may be far from over, but the business of war is only getting started, with mercenaries like Eric Prince lining up for a share of the pie.
As far as Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's comment on tariffs being justified on countries that still do trade with Russia is concerned, CNN News 18 is bringing you more of the inside understanding of the statement as far as the Indian power corridors are concerned. India believes these are statements to push Western agenda to maintain pressure on its rivals. The interview given by Zelensky aims to indirectly target India's position, even though otherwise he has not really targeted India. Top intelligence sources convey that the aim is to unsettle counterparts and test India's endurance. Similar tactics have been observed in past trade and strategic negotiations as well. Steel tariffs and visa discourse, all of these are issues that show a repeat US method of controlled escalation. Let's break this down further for you. Yes, these are coming even as some thaw maybe is being seen by some as far as India-US relationship is concerned. But how does India see these latest comments made by Zelensky, who has been very friendly with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and overall with India despite the prolonging of this war in Ukraine? The aim, of course, is to unsettle counterparts, test India's endurance, as has been the case throughout the tariff negotiations. We know that similar tactics have been used not just in trade talks, but there are steel issues as well. There are H-1B visa discourse that all show that this is a tactic that Washington is employing currently against New Delhi. And these incidents are being seen as, say, non-substantive. Negotiators will, of course, take national interest in line as far as these multiple back-channel exchanges and discrete consultations are concerned. They're, of course, going to maintain the line that India has publicly taken, and India is hopeful these could act as a safety valve to break the deadlock without public escalation, which India hasn't opted for so far. The anti-India comments by Peter Navarro, Howard Lutnick, etc. cannot be dismissed as individual outbursts, of course, and same is the line as far as Zelensky is concerned. They're all comments that are in synergy with what the US negotiation tactics are, what is coming right from the White Office currently against India, aimed at applying calibrated psychological pressure as well. But India's message is very clear that their sovereignty over core economic sectors is not going to be compromised. My colleague Siddhant Mishra is also joining us with more on this. Siddhant, not many feathers that this comment by Zelensky is going to ruffle. I think India kind of understands where it's coming from. Ukraine in the past has also asked India to put pressure or use its good offices to put pressure on Russia. US has done the same, and India has often maintained that line that they are for this war to stop. But this latest comment on tariff, tell us more of how the MEA is viewing this.
Well, so far there has not been any response that we have received from the Indian government. But all I want to say here is that on one end, President Zelensky, requests Prime Minister Modi to speak about the Ukrainian crisis with President Putin. Perhaps if after America, if after President Trump, any other world leader who is in a position to speak to both European leaders and President Putin, then that leader is Prime Minister Modi. So President Zelensky very well understands Prime Minister Modi and India's unique position. But despite that, he said that such tariffs is a good idea. Perhaps that's what right idea or good idea. That's exactly what he said. Many are saying that this is a hypocrisy of the Ukrainian leadership. That on one end they are banking upon the personal rapport of Prime Minister Modi with President Putin to pass on the message or, to speak to him, to come to the table for the talk. On the other end, they are encouraging Trump administration to impose more tariffs and economic sanctions on countries like India. Having said that, there is also the other point of view which one should understand. Look, President Zelensky right now is in a very, very tight spot. He knows that there are very...
Let's turn to the US now, where the immigration crackdown has found a new target: factories. And not just any factories, factories operated by top foreign firms. Here's the backstory. On Thursday, immigration officials descended on Georgia. We're talking full Hollywood-style raids. Blacked out SUVs, armored vehicles, and agents in full gear. Their target, an under-construction car battery factory. It's being built by two South Korean giants, car maker Hyundai and electronics firm LG. Hundreds of immigration agents swept into this building. They rounded up 475 workers, out of which more than 300 were South Korean nationals. They were paraded outside the plant. Take a look at this.
Keep coming this way, please. Dale, muchachos, vamos a salir de ahí para evitar problemas. Vámonos. Worried about guns.
The operation was led by ICE, that's the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, basically America's border agency. Trump has empowered them in recent months. ICE has been conducting massive raids across the country. However, this one stands out. For starters, it is the biggest one yet. Hundreds of ICE agents were deployed in Georgia, plus 475 people were rounded up. In terms of scale, this was the biggest raid yet. Secondly, it targeted a new demographic. Until now, ICE rounded up Mexicans and Central Americans. This time, they rounded up South Koreans, citizens of a very important ally. So naturally, there was a bigger fallout. South Korea has criticized the ICE crackdown. They conveyed their concern and regret.
In Seoul, we also conveyed our concerns and regret through the U.S. Embassy today, urging special attention to ensure that the legitimate rights and interests of our citizens are not violated. The economic activities of our companies investing in the United States and the interests of our citizens must not be unduly violated during the course of U.S. law enforcement.
But the U.S. is not de-escalating. Donald Trump has weighed in on the raid. He says ICE was only doing its job and that the rounded up Korean workers were illegal.
And I would say that they were illegal aliens and ICE was just doing its job. But I know nothing about the instance. It happened a little while ago. And we had, as I understand it, a lot of illegal aliens, some not the best of people. But we had a lot of illegal aliens working there. So, you know, look, they're doing their job. That's what they have to do. These are people that came through with Biden. They came through illegally. They came into our country. So we have to do our job.
So what is the truth? Were all 475 workers illegal? It's not clear yet. Some of them were employees of LG. Others were hired by contractors and subcontractors. Some had indeed entered America illegally, while others had overstayed their welcome, basically came in legally but refused to leave. A couple of workers say that they have visa waivers, that they can legally work in America for 90 days. But like I said, the full picture is unclear. These workers will not face any punishment in America because South Korea has reached a deal with Washington. So they will be flying back the detained workers. As we speak, the South Korean foreign minister is heading to the US. He will oversee the repatriation. He also plans to discuss work visa issues.
We were aware of such problems. And with this incident, I'm going to visit the United States and start negotiations on this.
The issue here is not the crackdown. No one is defending illegal workers. The issue is the manner. ICE was investigating this plant for months. Clearly, they had gathered enough evidence. So why not handle it discreetly? Why not take your ally into confidence? That's what mature countries would have done. Instead, ICE made a spectacle out of it, that too with little regard for the fallout. South Korea is a treaty ally of the United States. Just weeks ago, they struck a trade deal with Washington. Seoul promised to invest $350 billion in the US. I'll repeat that figure for you. $350 billion in investments. But after this raid, who knows? Which company will invest in such volatile times? Trump is not worried, though. He says relations with Seoul are fine.
We have a great relationship with South Korea. Really good relationship. You know, we just made a trade deal. But I'm going to look at it because I understand exactly what they're saying.
Chances are this is all a distraction from what? America's poor job market. Just look at the numbers for last month. Only 22,000 new jobs were added in August. That is far less than the projected 76,000. The unemployment rate is 4.3%, which is the highest since 2021. Trump can keep saying that America is hot, but his labor market is cooling ominously. And his solution? As always, it could be taxes. A Republican senator is pushing a new bill in Congress. It proposes a 25% tax on foreign hires, 25%. Say you hire 50 foreign workers in your company and you pay them $100,000 in total. This bill will slap a 25% tax on those payments. In this case, $25,000. That will be the tax. The idea is to discourage companies from hiring foreign workers. But here's the problem. Americans cannot do all jobs. They may not have the skill to do certain things or maybe even the interest. Taxes and raids will not fix the problem, they can only hide it. If you're having Monday blues, let's make it worse for you. Imagine a number with 12 zeros. 1 with 12 zeros is 1 trillion. It's a pretty big sum by any standards. Can you imagine it on your paycheck? Apparently Elon Musk can, and he has. That's the pay package he wants, $1 trillion, and Tesla's board seems eager to comply. They've unveiled the largest pay package in corporate history, one that could make Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire. But it's performance linked. For Musk to earn $1 trillion, Tesla's value must skyrocket. It's just over $1 trillion today. Musk has to take it up to $8.5 trillion by 2035. Plus, he must deliver on some of the most ambitious targets ever set for a CEO. So will this $1 trillion deal secure Tesla's future? Or will it end up as the biggest gamble ever made on a CEO? Our next report has more.
What's the price of keeping Elon Musk at the helm of a company? For Tesla's board, the answer could be $1 trillion. In a bold move, Tesla unveiled the largest corporate pay package in history, one that could make Musk the world's first trillionaire. But there's a catch. He only gets it if he turns Tesla into something far bigger than what it is today. The deal ties Musk's fortune directly to Tesla's growth. To unlock the full award, the company's market value must climb from just over $1 trillion today to an extraordinary $8.5 trillion by 2035, a level no company has ever reached. It would make Tesla more valuable than Nvidia, Apple, and Microsoft. And the targets don't stop there. Musk must also deliver on a dozen operational milestones. 20 million Tesla vehicles delivered in total. 10 million paying full self-driving subscriptions on average over 3 consecutive months. 1 million robot access in commercial service. And 1 million humanoid robots like Optimus deployed. On top of that, Musk must stay in an executive role for at least 7.5 years before he can cash out any shares. And to receive the final tranches, he must also present a board-approved CEO succession plan. So why does Tesla need this package now? The board argues Musk is the only one who can lead its pivot into artificial intelligence, robotics, and autonomous services. It also says the deal is meant to keep him focused. As sales slow in Europe, competition intensifies, and Tesla's stock has come under pressure. Between SpaceX, XAI, and even a foray into American politics, Musk's time and attention time are divided. The board has reportedly admitted he even threatened to walk away unless he was given more control. This plan is designed to tie him down, granting up to 423 million new Tesla shares, about 12% of the company, but only if the milestones are met. If not, the shares are forfeited. Musk reportedly already owns about 410 million shares, worth roughly $139 billion. Yet the new package would put him on a different scale entirely, far beyond the pay of other top CEOs. Microsoft's Satya Nadella received $79.1 million in compensation last year. Apple's Tim Cook earned about $74.6 million in the same period. And Nvidia's Jensen Huang made close to $50 million in fiscal 2025. By comparison, the scale of Musk's current deal is staggering. His 2018 package, once valued at $56 billion, was already the largest in history before being struck down in a Delaware court. This new proposal is more than 18 times bigger and could eventually give Musk control of about a quarter of Tesla's stock. Supporters say it ties his wealth to performance, while critics warn it concentrates too much power in one man's hands. Still, the board insists Musk is the only person capable of transforming Tesla. The new plan will go to a shareholder vote on November 6th. If approved, it would cement Musk's leadership for the next decade. But the question remains, is this trillion-dollar package a bold bet to secure Tesla's future, or the costliest risk any company has ever taken on one man?
Oh, man, it didn't go through.
A stable democracy, but a shaky leadership. That's the story of Japan in recent years. Their prime minister announced his resignation yesterday. His name is Shigeru Ishiba. He had taken charge in October 2024. So his tenure has lasted less than 1 year. And it was a very volatile one. Ishiba hurtled from controversies to setbacks to challenges both at home and abroad. Recently, he was busy negotiating a trade deal with the US. Last week, he clinched a broad agreement, and on Sunday, he decided to step down.
I have decided to resign as the Liberal Democratic Party president. Now that negotiations concerning the US tariff measures have reached a turning point, I thought this was the appropriate time to step aside and make way for the next prime minister.
Let's look at 3 important questions here. Why did Ishiba resign? Who will replace him? And what does this mean, this instability? What does it mean for the world? Ishiba belongs to a party called the LDP. That's the Liberal Democratic Party. They have dominated Japanese politics for decades, but recently they have lost support. First due to a corruption scandal and then due to a cost of living crisis. Ishiba came to power in this backdrop. He promised to fix the Japanese economy. But things actually got worse. Rice prices doubled on Ishiba's watch. So when Japan went to polls last year, the party suffered. The LDP lost its majority in the lower house of parliament, that too for the first time in 15 years. Then in July this year, they lost the upper house as well. Those losses had sealed Ishiba's fate, but he chose to stay on to strike a trade deal with the US. Which brings us to the second question. Who will replace him? The LDP will now hold a leadership contest. The winner will face a parliamentary vote. After that, they will take charge as prime minister. A couple of names are doing the rounds, like Sanae Takaichi. She has served as Japan's economic security minister. If elected, she would be the country's first female premier. Another name is Shinjiro Koizumi. He is 44 years old and political royalty. His father was prime minister in the early 2000s. And then there's Yoshimasa Hayashi, the chief cabinet secretary of Japan. He has also served as defense and agriculture minister. Whoever wins faces a tough road. Unlike in the past, the premiership is not guaranteed because the LDP does not have a majority. It must rely on its coalition partners. If they switch sides, even opposition leaders could run for prime minister. So things are uncertain and shaky. Which brings us to the last question. What does it mean for the world? Well, Japan is a crucial cog in the global system. It is the 5th largest economy in the world. It is well integrated into the global supply chain. It manufactures chips, cars, and electronics, and it is a key US ally. So simply put, what happens in Japan affects all of us, which is why this leadership crisis is worrying. In the last decade, Japan had a stable leadership. It was led by one prime minister from 2012 to 2020, and that was Shinzo Abe. When he retired, After he retired, it's been a revolving door. Yoshihide Suga was prime minister for 1 year. Fumio Kishida was prime minister for two and a half years, and then Shigeru Ishiba for less than 1 year. Such instability is bad news for Japan and the world, and I'll give you 2 main reasons why. Number 1, the economic heft. Japan is the 3rd biggest industrial producer. It makes up more than 5% of the global output, and this includes crucial tech like solar panels and electric vehicles. Japan's currency, the yen, is the 3rd most used currency in the world. It is taking a hit due to this political crisis. So that is the first reason. Japan is too rich to be unstable. Secondly, it has a major role in the Indo-Pacific. Japan has the 8th most powerful military in the world. Since the country is pacifist, it is not an army. They call it a self-defense force. Nomenclature aside, it plays a key role. Japan conducts drills in the South China Sea. It is seen as crucial to America's defense of Taiwan. And then there's North Korea. Pyongyang is deepening alliances with China and Russia. Again, Japan is a frontline state in this conflict. You need stable leadership to handle these challenges, to take some decisive calls. If the LDP cannot offer that, the Japanese may look elsewhere. The party has only been voted out twice in its history. Let's see if it can avoid a third wipeout. Our next story is from Nepal, where a massive protest turned violent today. Thousands of protesters took to the streets across major cities. And what was the trigger? A sweeping ban on social media platforms in Nepal. In the capital city of Kathmandu, protesters marched to the parliament. They broke through a police cordon and chanted slogans against KP Sharma Oli, the Prime Minister of Nepal. The state responded with a crackdown. They fired rubber bullets, tear gas and water cannons. At least 19 protesters have died. 19. The controversial ban was imposed last week. Nepal banned platforms like X, Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. The government introduced new rules to regulate these platforms. They were required to register with the government. The platforms refused to comply, so Nepal banned them. This angered the Gen Z population of the country. Many of them marched in protest today. They say this ban impacts their livelihoods and their future. It is not just about social media, it's about much more. Needless to say, this has had a political fallout. Just a short while back, Nepal's Home Minister resigned. He says he's taking moral responsibility for the death of protesters. Here's a report.
Vehicles set on fire. Broken windows and shattered glass. There are stones and debris everywhere. And the air is filled with clouds of tear gas. This is not a war zone. This is Nepal. Thousands of young people took to the streets across the country today. They chanted. They marched. They broke past police barricades. And they stormed the parliament gates. Security forces responded with tear gas and rubber bullets. By the end of the day, at least a dozen protesters were dead. Hospitals have been overwhelmed by the injured. The trigger behind the protests was a ban. Last week, the government of KP Sharma Oli banned over 24 social media platforms. From X to Instagram, even Facebook, WhatsApp and YouTube. The reason was non-compliance. These companies failed to register with the Nepali government. The requirement came after a Supreme Court order last year. Each platform was asked to appoint a local contact and name an officer to handle user complaints. They did not comply, so the government pulled the plug. Critics of the new registration law say this is not about compliance, it's about control. They are calling it a crackdown on dissent, one that's disguised as regulation. For the Gen Z of Nepal, this ban is a personal one. For many of them, social media had become a source of livelihood. Nepal's digital youth rely on social media to work, create, and earn. The government's ban sparked anxiety among them, so they decided to protest. Observers say no political party was behind today's protest. Protesters spread the word through VPNs, and they mobilized in real time. But the Oli government remains dismissive of their voices. Yesterday, Nepal's Prime Minister defended the ban. He called it a matter of national sovereignty. Oli declared he didn't care if 2 or 4 people lost their jobs.
For the protesters, those remarks only added fuel to the fire. Their anger goes beyond a social media ban. It's rooted in joblessness and in inequality. Unemployment remains high in the country. Around 2,000 Nepalis leave the country every day, according to an estimate. Most head to the Gulf of Malaysia. Others go west, chasing education, opportunity, or an escape. But those who remain, especially the youth, feel left behind. They see political leaders with access to greater resources. Many send their children abroad for education and work. Meanwhile, young citizens at home face limited opportunities. The ban has brought the Oli government's core challenge into sharp focus. A digitally connected generation, mobilized, vocal, and increasingly assertive. They are not waiting for political parties to deliver on their promises. They are pushing for change. They are organizing independently. Today, they were on the streets, at the gates of Nepal's parliament, and directly confronting the state authority.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
As far as Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's comment on tariffs being justified on countries that still do trade with Russia is concerned, CNN News 18 is bringing you more of the inside understanding of the statement as far as the Indian power corridors are concerned. India believes these are statements to push Western agenda to maintain pressure on its rivals. The interview given by Zelensky aims to indirectly target India's position, even though otherwise he has not really targeted India. Top intelligence sources convey that the aim is to unsettle counterparts and test India's endurance. Similar tactics have been observed in past trade and strategic negotiations as well. Steel tariffs and visa discourse, all of these are issues that show a repeat US method of controlled escalation. Let's break this down further for you. Yes, these are coming even as some thaw maybe is being seen by some as far as India-US relationship is concerned. But how does India see these latest comments made by Zelensky, who has been very friendly with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and overall with India despite the prolonging of this war in Ukraine? The aim, of course, is to unsettle counterparts, test India's endurance, as has been the case throughout the tariff negotiations. We know that similar tactics have been used not just in trade talks, but there are steel issues as well. There are H-1B visa discourse that all show that this is a tactic that Washington is employing currently against New Delhi. And these incidents are being seen as, say, non-substantive. Negotiators will, of course, take national interest in line as far as these multiple back-channel exchanges and discrete consultations are concerned. They're, of course, going to maintain the line that India has publicly taken, and India is hopeful these could act as a safety valve to break the deadlock without public escalation, which India hasn't opted for so far. The anti-India comments by Peter Navarro, Howard Lutnick, etc. cannot be dismissed as individual outbursts, of course, and same is the line as far as Zelensky is concerned. They're all comments that are in synergy with what the US negotiation tactics are, what is coming right from the White Office currently against India, aimed at applying calibrated psychological pressure as well. But India's message is very clear that their sovereignty over core economic sectors is not going to be compromised. My colleague Siddhant Mishra is also joining us with more on this. Siddhant, not many feathers that this comment by Zelensky is going to ruffle. I think India kind of understands where it's coming from. Ukraine in the past has also asked India to put pressure or use its good offices to put pressure on Russia. US has done the same, and India has often maintained that line that they are for this war to stop. But this latest comment on tariff Tell us more of how the MEA is viewing this.
Well, so far there has not been any response that we have received from the Indian government. But all I want to say is that on one end, President Zelensky, requests Prime Minister Modi to speak about the Ukrainian crisis with President Putin. Perhaps if after America, if after President Trump, any other world leader who is in a position to speak to both European leaders and President Putin, then that leader is.
Who gets overshadowed yet celebrated? The answer is the moon. Yesterday was a rare lunar eclipse. The Earth passed between the sun and the moon. It cast a shadow on the moon's surface. As the eclipse set in, the moon's color also changed. It became reddish, almost like blood. I'm sure you've seen stunning pictures of the blood moon. But have you seen the memes? Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The blood moon that we just saw illuminates skies across the world. Turkey's main opposition members use tables and chairs to prevent police from barging into their Istanbul headquarters, and dogs make waves in a surfing competition in California. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1974, American President Richard Nixon was pardoned by his successor, Gerald Ford. This was right after the Watergate scandal that led to Nixon's resignation. The pardon made Nixon immune from arrest. Ford called the pardon an attempt to move the country forward. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Çocuğuna bak ya!
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin. Ahead of the vice presidential elections, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked the NDA MPs to organize what he calls a Swadeshi Mela from Navratri till Diwali to promote made in India products and hold meetings with traders over the GST rate cuts. Swadeshi